Everyone, Joe Waxman, the astrologer here. Yeah. What's up, everyone? In this video, I want to talk about Terrence Howard. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast recently, and I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but I plan to. I've seen some stuff, and I've known about him for a while. And the reason I want to make this video, is because a lot of people are like kind of perplexed about a lot of his thinking and his ideas. Um, um, I mean, he's obviously a really talented actor. I love him in movies. I think he's great. And TV, whatever he's in. But he's also quite a genius, and people are not sure if he's just like spewing mumbo jumbo or there's something, legitimate about him. But as always, we can look at the astrology chart and find out. Guys, hit the like button, please. Subscribe if you haven't already, and book a reading with me, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. That's my email address. And once again, I apologize if I'm not as active these days making videos. I'm going through some stuff, some real existential stuff, deep inner transformation and outward physical hardship, all of it combined. And it just, I just have to give it a lot of space and breathing room and time in order to sort itself out. So that's what that is. So this is just going to be really kind of light. I'm not going into any detail, but we'll just look at his chart real quick and see if we can figure anything out. Okay, Terrence Howard. So this is not a timed birth, right? So that's probably one of the reasons why you won't see anyone else doing his chart. But so yeah, there's no time. So the angles are not correct, obviously. So like this is not his MC, this is not his ascendant. None of these houses are right. We don't know where the houses are. So let's be clear about that. All right. Pisces Sun, Aries North Node at 0 degrees, which is interesting because that's at the cardinal point, right? It's at the 0 degrees Aries point. If we were to make a draconic chart, it would look exactly like this. Interestingly enough, North Node conjunct Chiron. Now, Chiron often gets called the wounded healer, but in my observation and studies, it's much more than that. It can be a very kind of unique quality, express itself in a very unique way, almost like a maverick or somebody just totally one of a kind, right? Not necessarily the wounded healer archetype. That's not accurate always, right? We have to look at it a little more carefully to see how it's expressing itself. Saturn's conjunct Venus, right? So for artistry, there's something really nice about that because the Saturn can sort of solidify Venusian qualities, aspects, significations. And generally, these people, what's good about Saturn conjunct Venus is that these people have a much better hold on their vices. They're less likely to be, alcoholics, drug addicts, overeaters. They're gonna all the Venusian things are gonna be hauled in, right? So they're gonna know their limits as far as indulgence, excesses, and they're not going to go to extremes, generally speaking, with these combinations. Now, it can produce other, limitations with Venus. Having fun might be difficult for them. Relationships, challenges. We don't know what house it rules, so it's just general Venus significations there. What's really significant about his chart is this South Node Uranus Jupiter conjunction, particularly Uranus Jupiter, that is exactly conjunct retrograde down to 1 arc minute separation. That's super duper tight. This is ridiculous, right? Plus it's South Node. And if there's a element that we could point to that is really primarily speaking to his out of the box genius kind of thinking, it's this. Uranus Jupiter. We just had the Uranus Jupiter conjunction in Taurus, right? And that was more in the flavor of land and native or indigenous people rights and traditional stuff like that. This is Libra, so it's much more intellectual, right? So he's going to be all much more like, theoretical, intellectual, heady with this Uranus Jupiter combination. I'm sure it goes into social justice and things like that, ideological. But the thing about the Libra element is that it's less physical, more intellectual, and Venusian ruled, so it can also express itself in the arts and creativity as well. So this kind of if you want to take it down to the Uranian sort of revolution or political social kind of thing, it would be more expressed intellectually and through arts. However, I think his main expression is going to be very much tied into the sciences. Also, Venus conjunct Saturn. Saturn represents science often, and it's this conjunction, triple conjunction, disposited by Venus conjunct Saturn, right? So that's interesting. But this is super tight. So yeah. So I mean, is he fooling people or is he legit? He's legitimate. I mean, clearly, the astrology is saying that he's very much in that realm of genius, where Uranus and Jupiter are conjunct in an air sign with South Node, no less, right? What else is interesting is that Mercury's in Aquarius, so that's a very scientific Mercury, but it's tightly square Neptune, which is retrograde. And that is, again, is really interesting because so often people, when they look up, when they talk about Neptune, Mercury squares or hard aspects, they say like, oh, prone to dishonesties or lying or something like that. Perhaps not quite. I don't like to say lying because that implies intention and a willful misleading, right? When somebody's lying, it's like they're willfully, trying to deceive, right? Whereas the Mercury Neptune square or other hard aspects, it's not necessarily an intentional deception. It can mean a heightened imagination. It can mean that the mind is going off into discovery mode, right? You often see that, not often, I mean, a lot of times you'll see Mercury and Pisces with scientists where they're more discovering, they're more in their discovery kind of element mode, reaching out into the unknown, right? And so, also, when Mercury is with Pisces, we often see like mystics. So the Mercury Neptune square is, especially with Neptune in Scorpio, is going to have elements of that where he can reach out. Also, because Mercury's in Aquarius, so it's already very vibey, high vibey, vibrational. Aquarius is the vibrational sign, right? And so abstract thinking, high-minded, ideologies and abstractions. Squared Neptune in Scorpio, where Neptune is in the superior square. It's retrograde, so the vision is going to be very going into deep places. Retrograde, not going along with the grain with the society, like very independent and pure form, right? The other side of the sun, so it's not being corrupted by the sun. But without some other elements, this could very much venture into I mean, it's hard to say. It's not. I'm not one to validate his assumptions, his assertions about mathematics and whatnot. I'm not going to say they're right or they're wrong. I don't know. It's not my field of expertise. I don't have Uranus conjunct Jupiter, right? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a mathematician, although I was good at math when I was in high school. I didn't pursue that path. So I'm not going to validate or unvalidate. I'm just going to say that there probably is a lot to what he's saying. But the Mercury Neptune is going to also allow him to think in a much bigger, wider, huge kind of sphere. He's reaching out into the ether, right, in a very expanded way. Is it all realistic and probable and possible? I don't know. I don't know where he's wrong or where he's right, and I'm not going to, waste any time or effort trying to figure all that out. But I can say that it's possible that he's onto discoveries, scientific discoveries, theoretical. I don't know how he qualifies his field of knowledge, what he calls it, right? But whatever scientific, mathematic, quantum, physical, I don't know, whatever he calls it, there could be definitely some discoveries there. And that Neptune square Mercury would definitely aid in that, especially if he has other, factors that are going to ground him in reality. Also, his sun is in Pisces, so the imagination is heightened, obviously, right? Let's see, Moon is trine Venus. That's nice. That's not necessarily going to help him with his science, although I mean, maybe in small doses, maybe in some ways, because Venus is conjunct Saturn and dispositing this, triple planet conjunction of South Node, Uranus, Jupiter, right? So that's really interesting. Let's see. Uranus opposite Chiron. So Chiron's playing into this Uranus, Jupiter. It's pretty tight, not as tight, but still within a degree. And Chiron was also a very evolved, if we go to the mythology, right? I have to preface that. People make that one-to-one assumption that the mythology one-to-one represents the rock in space. I don't buy that. I think there may be some connection, but not necessarily really as tight as people make it. So anyway, mythologically, Chiron was like this teacher, healer, person. Anyway, that probably ties into it. But the real thing is this Uranus Jupiter South Node, right? We do see Sedna 0 degrees, Taurus. That's in conjunct the South Node. So it's tying in. It's at the same degree as his nodes. And now it's at 0 degrees Gemini. So that could be interesting because that's going to now trine. I don't know how much Sedna's playing into it, but whatever. Just bringing that in. Let's move on. I've been researching the the prime aspects. So I have an aspect set here. Well, look at that. So these are the non-zodiacal prime aspects. Let's call them that. What they are is the Ptolemaic aspects, just real quick, are the all the aspects that are divisions of 12, that 12 is divisible by, right? So we get 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 is the conjunction, 2 is the opposition, 3 is the trine, 4 is the square, right? And then we get 6 is the sextile. And then 12th is the semisextile or quincunx, which we call inconjunct, right? So those are all the Ptolemaic aspects, or the zodiacal aspects, let's call them. The non-zodiacal aspects, the prime non-zodiacal aspects are 5, 7, and 11. So the quintile, the septile, and the undecile. And these are important because they're non-derivative of any other. Because like if you take 8, that's a breakdown of, it's like a half square, right? It's a half. So an opposition, which is 2, halfway is a square, which is 4. And then if you take that again, half, it's 8. That's a semi-square, right? So those are derivative aspects, but the quintile is non-derivative. It's just a 5 aspect. You take the 360 degrees divided by 5, and you get a 5-pointed star quintile. Quintiles show up heavily in charts of people who are very creative, right? And have charm and beauty to them, because quintiles are a beautiful aspect. They're number 5. They form the 5-pointed star. The orbit of Venus in relation to the Earth forms a 5-pointed star perfectly. And Venus is associated with beauty. So the quintile brings up notions of number 5, which has the Leo 5th house association, as well as Venus beauty, right? So both of those. So we get the Mars Pluto quintile, which is very powerful and dynamic and interesting, and like, that gives him a lot of, I think that's going to help with his stage presence. It's also tied into Sedna. Sedna is a minor dwarf planet that's in the Oort cloud. It's way out there, further than Pluto, outside of Pluto. So I mean, there could be some significance with Sedna, but mainly this tight quintile between Pluto and Mars is really powerful. There's a septile here with Venus and South Node, which is really interesting because it's a triseptile. It's tight. Venus rules um, Libra, so that is dignifying the South Node and this conjunction as well through a septile. And septiles are of the number 7, obviously, and septiles have an otherworldly mystical quality to them. Septile, if you divide the chart in 7, it does not, the exact degree will not resolve itself. It's like pi. It's like a never-ending decimal place, right? It's I can't remember what degree exactly, but the decimals never resolve itself. So it has this kind of otherworldly quality to it. You don't see number 7 show up in nature very much. It's a number that humans like to use as a number of perfection, but that is very difficult to resolve organically, right? So it's kind of like an ideal number, a number of God, or a mystical number, otherworldly number. It shows up a lot in mystical situations, aliens and like outer space, ghostly stuff, but it has a quality of completion and mysticism and fatedness. So there's some like, when septiles show up, it's some like it represents a quality that we can't see or touch on, but we feel, right? We know it. So there's this quality here, the septile with South Node and Venus dignifying or receiving the planets in Libra. So that's interesting, right? Saturn, undecile of the sun. That's also interesting. The undeciles of the 11th aspect. The 11th aspect is a genius aspect. It shows up a lot with people who are just, they're reaching for that 11 prime number, genius, quality, rare, insight. 11 is also a very difficult number, and I think it can also represent disharmony, because it's very difficult to reach that kind of heightened perfect connection with the undecile. So I think like it's one of those things that can be very difficult, and then once in a while it hits, right? Because it's an 11-pointed star. It's not easy to make work in real life. You're not just gonna fall into genius, right? You have to struggle for it. And so I think like a lot of times the undecile can show difficulties wherever it lies, but then once in a while, like if a person really works at it, they can come up with that genius 11 vibrational invention or whatnot, right? And so he has it between Saturn and Sun, where Sun exalts in Aries. So, and Saturn being very scientific, right? So there is that connection here, which is interesting. Then we get another undecile between Ceres or bi undecile with Ceres and North Node, which probably isn't really much. I mean, I'm not going to make much of that here. Mercury and Chiron, it seems, have an undecile. That one's probably pretty interesting, right? It probably adds up to something, because Mercury is the planet of intellect. It's in Aquarius, and then Chiron, having qualities of Saturn and Uranus, really. If we want to just be like completely grounded in how we relate to Chiron, not taking the mythology, but just Saturn, Uranus. So there is the kind of higher level of thinking there. So there is probably some genius insights to be gained from this undecile connection. Mercury also has a a weaker triseptile to Pluto, which is very scientific, and a quintile to the Jupiter Uranus connection. Also not very strong, but still there. So that's really interesting. Also, there seems to be a light quintile between Neptune and Venus. Anyway, and that's probably good for his acting. Or no, that's Saturn, Neptune, Saturn. Sorry. Yeah, and these are just, I mean, these are lighter, but if it makes shapes, then that's really important. So here we can see like there's a triangle here with Sedna, a pretty strong triangle, right? And Sedna's way out there, so I don't know how it relates, but Sedna often relates to like, it can relate to cold things, right? Ice, frozen things, far north. So I don't know what he has in relation to that. Maybe he takes cold baths. I don't know. It is connected to his Mars, so Pluto. But anyway, yeah. So that's Terrence Howard. Let's see here. Jupiter's retro. So his moon is way out of bounds. That's also important to recognize that his moon, Sag moon, is way out of bounds. And normally this would probably indicate that he's quite a partier, but because Venus and Saturn are conjunct, it's probably limiting that. It's probably just making him just go to extremes with his philosophies and his adventures and thinking. All the outer planets are retro, so that's going to really, make him bring his whatever they represent. It's going to be more authentic, independent, outside the box, against the grain, all those things. There's a Sun and Venus mutual reception by exaltation, so that's interesting as well, signifying the Sun and Venus. Yeah, ruler of the South Node, Uranus, Jupiter. And by triplicity. Interesting. Sometimes I like to look at the tightest aspects. This Neptune square Mercury is exact 0,0,0,0. That's amazing. That's amazing. And this Uranus conjunct Jupiter, it's not even 1 arc minute apart. I think if we go to the seconds, you would see that it's less than a minute apart. So that's fascinating. A lot of super tight aspects. Pluto in conjunct or quincunx Saturn. That also is going to be a very scientific connection. Even though it's the quincunx, it's still there. Now Saturn is in the superior position over Pluto. So the Saturnian element, which is often very scientific, but Pluto, especially Pluto and Virgo, can also be very scientific. So this is definitely going to add to his obsessively scientific thinking. Yeah, so a lot of tight aspects there. Venus trine Moon is really nice as well. Yeah, even though Venus is not in great dignity, it does have that mutual reception with the sun, and it's trying the moon, and that's really nice. It makes him a lot more likable. He's got a lot of hard aspects. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's pretty much it for Terrence Howard. I just thought it was interesting, on the Joe Rogan podcast, the stuff that he was mentioning, and however how people are like just really confused by him. So I thought I'd look at his chart, and definitely explains a lot about all the stuff that we're seeing with him. So anyway, guys, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please Please hit the like button, subscribe, book a reading with me. Yeah, macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And I'll see you guys again soon. Joe Axman, the astrologer, signing off. Sorry, I'm not in a super jolly mood, but it is what it is. Anyway, guys, laugh it off. Take a victory laugh, win before you win, all that good stuff. No,